On Monday, Axios published a report quoting congressional Democrats who say their own voters are urging them to get violent in resisting the Trump agenda. This is happening at town halls and other in-person constituent meetings, they say, and it's not one or two Democrat members of Congress quoted. It's more than 24, all saying variations of the same thing. Quote, the idea that we're going to save every norm and that we're not going to play the Republicans' game, I don't think that's resonating with voters anymore, says one. The sense of anger and fear and despair puts congressional Democrats in a different position where they can't keep following norms and decorum, says another. Others say their own base is asking for violence to grab press and public attention, saying civility isn't working anymore, and to prepare for violence to fight to protect our democracy. When one Democrat congressman said in a meeting, when they, the Republicans, light a fire, my thought is to grab an extinguisher, someone responded, well, have you tried gasoline instead? I guess we should be thankful that they still have use for fossil fuels. That is a pretty good concession. But I think most people don't actually raise their eyebrows as much at these calls for violence, given how much violence we've seen for years now, as they do at this claim or perception that Democrats or left-wing progressives or Trump opponents in general have been obeying rules and norms. Since when? The hoaxes, the sham impeachments, whatever the truth about COVID as applied to the 2020 election actually is, trying to put Trump in prison on nonsense charges, nearly shooting his head off. Though, of course, the party didn't officially do that, just some mystery weird kid who nobody knew anything about or ever will, and everybody already forgot the name of anyway. What can you do? Boys will be boys. The argument cannot seriously be, well, dang it, norms aren't working anymore, so now we'll try violence. The honest take is we've tried everything, including violence, actually, and we're just bad at it. So it's time we got better at violence. And while most of the time I take whatever follows the qualifier anonymous sources say as at least partial crap, I do actually buy this report. One, because of the volume of those quoted, not one, not two, but dozens. And two, because I absolutely buy that these members of Congress are so gutless that they'll anonymously tell some reporter about how unhinged and deranged and dangerous their supporters actually are, but they won't show the decency or the courage to call out that insanity publicly. Violent threats against my fellow Americans are wrong. Unless, of course, saying so might cost me a few votes in the next election, then we just don't talk about it. That sounds like cowardice exactly on brand with Congress. Another interesting piece of the story is the quote selected for the headline. Democrats told to get shot for the anti-Trump resistance, not to shoot, but get shot. Does that mean start agitating and get just violent enough to provoke a violent response, thus maintaining victimhood for political reasons? Or does it just refer to the prior point? We aren't accurate enough to shoot people ourselves, so we're just going to have to get shot for the cause, whichever is correct. A guy immediately heeded the call at publication. On Monday morning, he got shot dead for the anti-Trump resistance at a Border Patrol facility on the border in McAllen, Texas. He tried to commit presumably some type of mass shooting, and his face permanently met the concrete instead. He was 27-year-old Ryan Luis Mosqueda, who showed up with what the reporting calls an assault rifle, presumably an AR setup, and some kind of tactical vest. Not tactical enough, though, because he fired dozens of rounds upon approaching the building, but he killed nobody. He did injure 3, including one Border Patrol employee who was shot in the knee, but return fire from Border Patrol and McAllen police dropped him dead before he could do any more serious damage. And if the attempted mass shooting was lame, well, that's not even considering the car he drove to the scene. It was a winged Chevy Cobalt with some spray paint quote of a Latin phrase from the video game Black Ops 2, the motto of a fictional revolutionary movement within the game. And considering how this worked out, he probably would have been better off just challenging an ICE agent to a 1v1 on Nuketown instead. Or maybe not. I guess the outcome probably would have been about the same. Laid out, face down, in disgrace. And in Call of Duty, he probably would have been teabagged too. At least in real life, His body retained maybe a shred of unbagged dignity, although maybe Border Patrol did take a dip on him afterward. I don't know. I've seen no confirmation or denial. The DHS Assistant Secretary said the incident could have been a bloodbath if not for the fearless actions of Border Patrol and McAllen law enforcement. And it wasn't even an isolated incident just this week. It's so weird. For breaking norms, this stuff is awfully normal. Something very similar happened just north near Dallas on Friday when there was another shooting attack on border enforcement that was also mostly a failure. On Friday in Alvarado, Texas, anti-ICE rioters showed up at an ICE facility with goggles, masks, and flyers reading "Resist, Fight Oligarchy, and Fight ICE Terror," among other things. They started lighting fireworks outside the building and vandalizing the building and vehicles with phrases including "traitor" and "ice pig," because somehow it's not traitorous to violently attack U.S. officials on behalf of foreign invaders. But as designed in this attack, the fireworks lured ICE facility employees to come outside the building. They called police. A responding Alvarado police officer was then shot by one of these rioters. He was hit in the neck, which of course sounds serious, but he's already released from the hospital, so presumably just a grazing or some other sort of less serious wound. And this incident wasn't just shots at that cop individually. At the time he was shot, another shooter across the street opened fire with 20 or 30 rounds from an AR-15. This from some sort of stationary position, waiting for the opportunity after the unarmed ICE personnel were baited outside. And still, all misses. The AR-15 is the deadliest weapon imaginable, except in the hands of the incompetent. It turns out that assault aim is still required to operate the assault rifle. Now, because this was a coordinated effort, 10 of these rioters are now charged with attempted murder of a federal officer, as announced by the U.S. Attorney for the region on Monday.
Make no mistake, this was not a so-called peaceful protest. Today, my office has charged 10 individuals with 3 counts of attempted murder of a federal officer. Each of these defendants faces a mandatory prison term of 10 years and up to life in prison. No word on if very poor marksmanship might be a mitigating factor at sentencing or not, but the fact that they somehow killed nobody is also amazing, considering the equipment that they had. After the shooting, these rioters fled, but local sheriff's deputies stopped several of those involved. Altogether, they were carrying many more guns, other weapons, and 12 sets of body armor, plus all of their signs and their flyers, of course, often on themes of defending democracy or other nonsense. But even that is a miscalculation. They aren't choosing violence ill-preparedly because majority will is threatened. They're choosing violence because they don't have it, and they're politically powerless on this matter. And the irony is they actually would be much smarter to pick fights with Trump using the very norms and civility by which they insist they have long operated, because by polling on many issues, Americans actually agree with their criticisms. The economy has been a little uncertain with the ongoing tariff war. The big, beautiful budget bill, not particularly popular for a variety of reasons. On foreign policy, a lot of divided opinion on the Iran airstrikes and other U.S. involvement and intervention elsewhere. If you want to criticize Trump and convince people, you actually do have a lot of options right now. But the one that you don't is the one that they choose: immigration. It's the one place where Americans are mostly on board with what Trump is doing, at least relatively speaking. Not according to me, but according to polling as analyzed on the network, maybe most inclined to wish it was the other way.
There is no issue on which Trump is doing so much better than he was in his first term, more than the issue of immigration. Trump is begging for a fight on this because he knows what he's doing so far is working with the American electorate. No matter what poll you look at, no matter which way you cut it, the American public is with the Republicans, the American public is with Donald Trump, and to a much greater extent than they were in term number one. And it's not just on the broad issue of immigration, it's on the specifics as well, in which the American public is with Donald Trump and the Republicans.
So no, they didn't choose violence to defend democratic will. They chose violence because they don't have it. And of course, it is far from the first time. Violent action in pursuit of left-wing causes has been the norm for the last decade, maybe longer. The norms that these congressional hecklers say they're considering leaving now, they actually left years ago. And even though I do take their point on the application of violence where justified, our country is founded on it, after all. Where justified is a very important qualifier. When government neglects the consent of the governed, there is justification, as the Declaration describes, but the consent is actually with the government and against them in this case. And that's just the moral consideration, but there's also the practical one too. Whether you're applying violence with justification or not, for it to have any effect, you gotta be good at it. Right now, they're losing violence like Miss Teen South Carolina loses speech and debate.
Some people out there in our nation don't have maps, and I believe that our education, like such as in South Africa and the Iraq, everywhere like such as, and I believe that they should, our education over here in the U.S. should help the U.S. Or should help South Africa and should help the Iraq and the Asian countries.
Whether you bring your words or your weapons to the fight, you gotta be sharp with both, but in the quest to become a warrior poet, they've somehow become neither. Although what else really could have been expected? If you thought the debate skills were weak, well, remember the physical training.
We're trying to develop self-defense skills in a political climate that's increasingly violent, especially towards marginalized peoples, people who are not in power, the poor, the oppressed.
We're invested in building material force of resistance against the rising nature of fascism in this country and obviously the longer history of white supremacy. And so we're really invested in cultivating the capacities for our bodies to just be stronger, because at the end of the day, it's stronger people are harder to kill.
Well, I guess that guy in McAllen wasn't very strong then. Should have trained harder. Would have been harder to kill. Usually I'd think about being careful what I wish for, but in this case, I'll wish more. Please do study more. Please do train harder, because almost invariably, hard work has a natural tendency to change your mind about a lot of these things. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel. Always appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below, and especially over on X. That is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to coming out and chatting my live streams as live on Wednesday and Sunday nights. Looking forward to it. Goodbye. Hey, if you made it all the way to the end of the video, that means you probably found some value in the video. If you found some value in the video, please consider supporting my material. You can do that one time or recurring for as little as $1 a month. It not only helps me sustain, but it helps me pay the people who make my videos possible. Linked in the description for you, mattchristiansenmedia.com/support. Thanks for listening.